Welcome to a video tutorial working our way through algebra, and in this video, arithmetic sequences. I want to talk about what an arithmetic sequence is, kind of introduce it to you guys a little bit, just so we get some good language, some understanding some terms and how they work, and what this whole idea of the common difference is all about. So let's start with this sequence here. So first, this arithmetic sequence, all it is, it's a number pattern. Like it's kind of like a game, but it's a number pattern where we add the same thing repeatedly every time. So let's start with a nice basic one. Here we go. We got 3, 5, 7, 9, 11, 13. We can see that we start with 3, and it's not too difficult that to find the next term in the sequence, we add 2 over and over again, right? So if I wanted to know, well, what comes after 13 in this number pattern, we would say add 2 more, and the next term should be 15. But let's get some common language going on here. So in arithmetic sequences, each number has a value, but it's also considered a term. So for example, 3 would be the first term of the sequence. We call it A1 for A for the sequence name and 1 for the first term. 5 would be the second term. 7 would be the third term. If someone gave you this sequence and said, what is A6? Well, you would say, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 would equal the sixth term of the sequence, which would be 13 in this case. This would be the sixth term. There's the fifth term, and so forth. So knowing how to identify terms, recognizing the first term, second term, using some of this notation, this is what we get into with arithmetic sequences. Another thing, so we always know the terms. In any arithmetic sequence, there's some really big things we need to know. You always need to know what the first term is. So we got to have some place where we're starting with. In this case, our first term, A1, is equal to 3. Now, that tells me, okay, our sequence, we start with this number, 3. Boom. After that, we have this little plus 2 describes the pattern to get all the terms after A1. We call that our common difference. Difference just being what is different between the next term and the one after that. So common difference. And in this sequence, our common difference is 2, positive 2, because we're adding 2 repeatedly. I need an E there. Too bad I can't spell. All right, so we have common difference is 2. The first term is 3. We can find the next sequence. The seventh term would be 15. It's a nice, easy one to start with. Let's take a look at another one that's a little bit trickier. It's harder to tell what the constant or the common difference might be in this case, right? But let's talk about some things we do know. We do know the first term is a 12. So A1 in this sequence would be 12. So we're starting with 12. And if I'm looking at my number sequence here, I'm decreasing this case, right? So the one over here, we were adding 2 over and over again. This looks like I'm subtracting a number. What that tells me is the common difference is going to be a negative number. We're always adding, but in this case, we're adding a negative number, the resulting being I get smaller. So my constant difference should be negative. But now how do I find it? This looks really hard. I can't in my head just figure it out. So here's where we get the name common difference. I can take 2 numbers in a sequence, and if I take the term and subtract the one before it, 9.78 minus 12, we see that we get a number 2.22, negative 2.22. Let's take the next 2 terms. Let's take 7.56 and subtract 9.78 from it. If I subtract those consecutive terms, I also get negative 2.22 as the difference. This is why it's the common difference. If I take any 2 terms, one right after each other, and subtract them, again, you always do the next term subtracting the one before it. So the fourth term minus the third term, the second term minus the first term. We always want to see how we're changing from one to the next. So 5.34 minus 7.56. You can punch that in your calculator, but you'll also see that it's again a negative 2.22. So the common difference can be found by subtracting two terms together and finding out what that difference is. In an arithmetic sequence, it'll be the same difference between any term. All right, so what if I want to find the next one here? I can take just 3.12, and the pattern is let's subtract 2.2 from it. 2.22. If I do that, the next term should be 0.9. All right, so hopefully it's a good introduction to arithmetic sequences, talking about what an arithmetic sequence is. Again, we need to know the first term, and then we need to know the common difference. How do we get the next term? What is this whole pattern about? And bigger picture, this whole idea of a pattern of numbers where we add the same thing over and over again, it's a really big idea in algebra, as we love to recognize what is changing, what's the pattern, how can I show this pattern in a graph or a table or an equation or some sort of relationship. So here we're starting off very, very basic patterns of adding the same thing over and over again, and it's an arithmetic sequence.